Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. We're on verse 26. 1:5:26. Tatran vaham Krishna katha pragayatam anugrahena shrunavam manohara sashuttya me napadam vishrinvata priyashvasyangam. O Vyasadeva, in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. And thus, listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Lord Sri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is attractive not only in his personal features, but also in his transcendental activities. It is so because the absolute is absolute by his name, fame, form, pastimes, entourage, paraphernalia, etc. The Lord descends on this material world out of his causeless mercy and displays his various transcendental pastimes as a human being, so that human beings attracted towards him become able to go back to Godhead. Men are naturally apt to hear histories and narrations of various personalities performing mundane activities, without knowing that by such association one simply wastes valuable time, and also becomes addicted to the three qualities of mundane nature. Instead of wasting time, one can get spiritual success by turning his attention to the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. By hearing the narration of the pastimes of the Lord, one contacts directly the personality of Godhead. And as explained before, by hearing about the personality of Godhead, from within all accumulated sins of the mundane creature are cleared. Thus, being cleared of all sins, the hearer gradually becomes liberated from mundane association and becomes attracted to the features of the Lord. Narada Muni has just explained this by his personal experience. The whole idea is that simply by hearing about the Lord's pastimes, one can become one of the associates of the Lord. Narada Muni has eternal life, unlimited knowledge, and unfathomed bliss, and he can travel all over the material and spiritual worlds without restriction. One can attain to the highest perfection of life simply by attentive hearing of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord from the right source, as Sri Narada heard them from the pure devotees, Bhaktivedantas, in his previous life. This process of hearing in the association of the devotees is especially recommended in this age of quarrel, Kali. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So Narada is recounting his experience in becoming attracted to Krishna, to Vyasadeva. And we had heard about the power of prasad, that just one time he took actually the remnants of these devotees, and that really changed his heart and increased, he said, the dharma evadma ruchif prajayate, their motive activities, their dharma, their service attitude became attractive to me. That way of being became attractive to me. And so the power of tasting the remnants of Krishna's prasad, and also hearing. Hearing is the central activity, and this verse is all about hearing. He's in that association. Imagine there are these experienced devotees traveling, and they're staying at this place because it's the rainy season. When it's the rainy season, it's just raining for like 4 months. So they're just staying and they're camping out and they're doing what they do. So it's their home for 3 or 4 months. And here's this little boy. He's 5 years old. He hasn't gone to school. He has no experience outside of just being with his mother and being the son of a maidservant. And he's just humbly and innocently hearing. And that person became Narada. And Narada is looking back and saying, it was this. This is what did it. So context again, Vyasadeva is he's actually a Shakti-Avesh avatar. He's an empowered incarnation. It means he's a jiva who's empowered with the specific potency of Krishna to edit scripture and present it. And his only interest in doing so, his only interest is to help people, right? This is what qualifies him to be called a pure devotee. He's not doing it for name recognition. He's not trying to get, what do you call it, tenure. He's not interested in like, oh, my opinion should be like broadcast. I want it to be that other opinion. It's not an academic interest. It's only out of compassion. But he wasn't feeling satisfied. In his heart, he knew something was off. He wasn't really meeting his goal. He didn't know why. And so Narada is telling him this, not just exactly to convince Vyasadeva of how important it is to be interested in Krishna. Vyasadeva already knows that. For Vyas, he needs to understand how he can do the best good for others, right? It's not enough to want to help others. That's very good. It's good to want to help others. That's the beginning. That's a beginning of spiritual consciousness, because it's like, I'm thinking beyond myself, right? In the lower modes of nature, really to help with everybody else. We don't say that because it's not polite, but that's actually what we feel. It's just about me in the lower modes of nature. Higher modes of nature, I want to get mine, but I don't want to step on anybody else in the process. And in the higher modes of nature, exclusively, I think in the mode of goodness, we actually get pleasure out of helping others. We start to tap into that service attitude where we realize, like, yeah, I could like cook a meal and just eat it. That's cool. But I actually really enjoy seeing people eat. I enjoy them getting pleasure more than I get my own pleasure, because it's so much bigger than what I can experience on my own. This is the beginning of spiritual consciousness. It's like, it's bigger than me, something bigger than me. And Vyasadeva, he wants to do good in the greatest way possible. So this is relatable because basically, almost everybody I meet who comes to bhakti, they have this way in which they want to do good, right? They want to do good in their own lives. They want to make a mark of positivity. This is natural for the soul, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. We've talked about this other times. Like if I say I want to do good for somebody, and like they have an appendix that's about to burst, and I say, well, I'll take care of it. Then the question is, well, what's your qualification for that, right? We have to know how to do it. We have to know what to do. And so Vyasadeva is getting the formula because he wanted to do good. And Narada is saying, look, I was completely innocent. I was just a child. And this transformed my trajectory completely, this hearing process. It worked for me. And this is my personal testimony. And there's so much evidence that this is the process. So this is what you should not just do yourself. This is what you should be helping others to do. And to distract them from this, to obscure this, to not make this the center, is why you're not feeling satisfied. Because you are so finely tuned toward doing good for others that when you're not focused on this thing and broadcasting this process, you don't feel like you're actually satisfied. This is why Srila Prabhupada, when he started this society, he called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. One of his well-wishers said, why don't we call it the International Society for God Consciousness? And he said, no, I want to have Krishna's name there. Because he understood the power of Krishna's name, because he had experienced it himself through fervent chanting and hearing, and he had faith in it, that he put Krishna in the middle. So there's always this way in which when we're presenting Krishna and bhakti, we want to help people to be able to receive that. Because if they spit out the medicine, then what good is it for them? And at the same time, we want that little tablet of medicine to contain Krishna. We don't want to fine tune and adjust to the point where Krishna's not even there anymore. We're not even saying his name. We're adjusting the Maha Mantra so there's less or more syllables. We're like playing with it, this and that. We don't talk about the Supreme Person and his activities. Like that's keeping the principle out of the thing, and you know, glorifying the details, and that's a mistake. So somehow or other, Krishna has to be there because that's the potent feature. That's like in a tablet of medicine, you have all this sugar, you have like the coating that lets it time release in the stomach the right way, and you have all these other kind of secondary ancillary ingredients, and you have like the active ingredient, the thing that actually makes you better. So that's the hearing and then chanting. That's the fundamental medicine. So that's what um, spiritual medicine is about. In fact, Lord Chaitanya used this analogy. He said that just like a medical practitioner will give medicine, they'll come to your door. In traditional Varnashrama culture, doctors were brahmanas. They didn't receive money exactly. They received whatever people were willing to give and able to give. So they operated on a sliding scale, and they just tried to do good. But they also were qualified as doctors, and they would come to your door and so, does anybody need any help here? And they would give their help and their services as they were qualified and able. And he said, similarly, devotees do the same thing. They go door to door, they go person to person, and they give hymns and medicine. And the hymns are the Bhagavatam, and the medicine is the Mahamantra. This is what they do. They give this spiritual medicine. So if you ever want to do good for somebody else, you can. You don't have to go to medical school. Not a bad idea. The world needs doctors, but it definitely needs people to share spiritual medicine. And the education for how to do that is in this very pastime. Narada Muni is saying this is how you can actually do good for others, Vyas, because I know you want to, and I know you're feeling like you're not doing it, right? So this is poignant for those of us who want to do good and see the um, confused, bewildered, suffering condition of others and want to be able to do something about it at its root cause. The root cause of our suffering is our being turned away from Krishna. That's the root cause. Once you're turned away from Krishna, so many other things happen. Other modes of nature activate. Things that seem like awful ideas start to become really good ideas. Maybe I'll just kill that animal and eat it. And then, your consciousness gets degraded. This happens and that happens. And you can address all those other things too. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But the root causes are aversion and turning away from Krishna. When you turn away from light, you sit in darkness and you're alone and cold and things aren't so good. And spiritually speaking, addressing the root cause is incredibly powerful. Just like in public health, if you understand the root cause of disease and trouble, and you help prevent that, you save so much money and time instead of dealing with 60 years of obesity and diabetes and bad habits and cancer and this and that. You just help people to eat and operate in the right way in terms of the human body. Preventing is always a better idea than curing. And if something is already full-fledged and out of control, you can also cure it at its root by bringing the hearing and chanting process in. We can see that in our own lives. And we weren't innocent like Narada Muni at the age of 5. Many of us had full-blown bad habits when we started coming to bhakti, and still those were purified and rectified because this is the power of bhakti process. Lord Chaitanya doesn't just give it for the innocent at heart. He gives it for the residents of Kali Yuga. Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, this process of hearing and the association of the devotees is especially recommended in this age of quarrel. This is the age of quarrel, hypocrisy, low attention spans, distraction, so many other alternative processes, fake gurus, fake incarnations of God. There's all these things going on. Krishna knew this. Lord Chaitanya knew this. He gave this process of hearing and chanting for us in this age. And that means that it's for those who are incredibly disqualified too, and that's okay. So it can prevent and it can also cure. So there's a way in which we're being guided here to, once again, the central activity of hearing and chanting, but we're also being guided as interested parties in doing good as to the processes that really will do that, spreading the hearing and encouraging the chanting of the Mahamantra and spiritual vibrations of scripture, especially core texts like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and distributing prasadam. These are core activities that devotees have engaged in from the beginning of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And in every country in the world, those are the core practices that they do and help others to engage in. And the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mhm.
So in order to prevent mission drift, we have to keep hearing about these things and practicing them ourselves, so that whatever else we do to package the hearing, chanting, and prasadam processes, we don't take those things out of the picture and make the medicine into just like Flintstones chewable sugar tablet. Sorry. So just to review, Vyasadeva is being advised about the power of hearing in association, how it changed Narada, and we're advised about this process for ourselves as the central process and also as the active ingredient in our attempts to help others. We talked about this natural inclination of the soul to do good, and how addressing the root cause is the most powerful way to do good, rather than trying to clean up the symptoms. You know, I had one professor in my master's of public health. She was my advisor for my thesis. She said, public health means to turn off the sink instead of mopping the floor. Instead of just trying to deal with put out the fires of all the problems that have been created, try to find out why those problems are being created in the first place, right? So spiritual public health means to address the disease of the heart, that is disconnection from source, and to reconnect its source naturally powers the human vehicle so much that it can create this trickle-down effect of purifying the life of the living entity in many ways. Even if they don't know about how to live a life in the mode of goodness, that reconnection is the essential and effective ingredient that can help them. And it's the ingredient that stays in our practice no matter what else we're doing. We may serve as monks, we may serve as grihastas in a home with maybe with children. We may serve in this country or that country, in this language or that language. We may operate, food distribution restaurants or not, or like teach yoga asana to bring people in or not. All these other things will come and go, but we will always hear and chant. We will always be hearing and chanting. Lord Chaitanya, from the beginning of his falling in love with Krishna as part of the Leela of becoming a devotee, was hearing and chanting. Until the very end, he was hearing and chanting. In fact, all day and all night at that point, he was hearing and chanting. All day, well, let's start with all night. All night, he was with his confidential devotees, hearing and chanting about the most intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna as per his taste for bhakti. And all day, what did he do? He went out and found people who were innocent and just chanted Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in public, all day. Even when he was experiencing the most refined taste for love of God at night in practically seclusion, still all day he was going out hearing and chanting in public, holding mass Sankirtan in Jagannath Puri. He was doing that. His followers did that. Srila Prabhupada did that. He never stopped chanting. He relished chanting. And that's what's called the watering process. Lord Chaitanya said, we're watering the seed. Even after it becomes, from a seed becomes a full-grown creeper and a vine, it grows all the way, he says, out of the planet of the material universe, and it bursts through the covering of the material universes and goes to Goloka Vrindavan, and it flowers and creates a fruit of pure love of God, and that fruit is available for you. You have pure love of God, and it's now resting there at the feet of Krishna. Still, the watering process of hearing and chanting goes on. So, Hare Krishna. We'll take any comments, questions, reflections on the central process of hearing and how to do good for others.
I love how that ties so nicely together with Kishori's reading earlier this morning about the importance of chanting and hearing the holy name and hearing and chanting with your heart, but also, it's that sound, it's that vibration. So I love again how, our morning really tied together really nicely between the chanting inspiration and then the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, that just use your tongue to chant and just use your ears to listen. That's like really simplifying it. Yeah, and I was also connecting what you were sharing and what was in the purport to what Buddha and Maharaj was speaking about last night of like cleaning. He wasn't saying the dust. What was the word? The junk. Yeah, the junk from our heart, and the 7 arrows that hit Krishna's heart from things that we do or don't do. And when I asked, well, say we do shoot an arrow at Krishna's heart, what would you recommend? He said, just chant. He
Just like this. That's
just
his
like
answer.
this.
Yeah.
Shet Japa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because actually our philosophy contains elaborate and helpful descriptions of all the different ways in which we create distractions and all the different kinds of junk that's accumulated in the heart. Chaitanya Charitamrita includes a beautiful chapter where there's an elaborate cleansing of the temple of Gundicha, which is it's relevant because it indicates the purification of the heart. And in that chapter, Srila Prabhupada, and he quotes the spiritual master Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talk in depth and at length about the different anarthas in the heart. But this is fundamentally not a process of focusing on those anarthas and useless things. It's good to know about them because as a gardener, you want to be able to recognize weeds. It's helpful. But the main thing in our process is the positive process, because by developing positive attraction to hearing and chanting, you can actually choke out those weeds that are even already there. And then as you refine your practice, you can start to become aware of those weeds, and then notice them in the heart. And interestingly, one of the ways that we become aware of the effects of weeds, of useless things in the heart, is by attentive chanting. When we're actually chanting attentively, one of the things that happens to developing devotees is that they become aware of their own shortcomings. They're made to become aware. Krishna helps us to see them, whereas we were previously unable to see them. Is like when you're chanting, you're asking for service, and so part of what happens is that when you're chanting really attentively, Krishna will show you your own anger. He'll show you your own greed. He'll show you your own hypocrisy, different things. He'll show you your own inconsistencies. And the way that he does that is by letting you become aware of it while you're chanting. And so you can then release that. It's like, okay, I see it, I acknowledge it, that's right, that's mine, I've carried it, it's been mine for some time, I'm ready to let it go, Krishna help me. And you offer that up in your chanting and in your service. And maybe there's more work to do with that. Maybe there's more of a concerted effort to do in your life to let go of that particular thing. But it's the chanting itself which lets you see. I mean, at first we're kind of like blissfully unaware about all of the things in our heart. It's the chanting that casts a light on all these things. So we don't really even need to focus on the negatives so much. But when they come up, we deal with them like a gardener deals with weeds. We primarily focus on that positive thing. And it's it's no coincidence Maharaj was focusing on that last night. He's well aware that our philosophy has dealt with this process of hearing and chanting and the purification of these anarthas extensively. It's relevant from the beginning to the point where you're a very advanced devotee, still relevant.
Yeah.
More reflections, comments?
I feel like for me, like chanting is weeding. Like that's how when I go in the garden and so many weeds everywhere. I feel like when I chant, or like if I'm in a situation where I don't know what to do, I just chant, because I feel like that's what helps me clean up the area, just like pulling weeds. And you just have to listen, and sometimes it's hard when you just have lots of things going on all at the same time, and you're like, what do I do? Or I just chant. I'm like, I don't know. I do know what to do. I just chant, and that's what makes my heart feel better, and that's what grounds me, and I remember, and makes me remember.
Yeah, so there's two things. There's like the way in which we try to have like a practice at the beginning of our day, so we can have some, because when we do that, then we're asking for support, and we'll get it throughout our day. You get that like strong injection in the morning of Krishna consciousness. You're also you're asking Krishna to like, be with you, give you the intelligence to deal with your life. And then there's a way in which like things come up and you're like, well, but what do I do right now? And so the answer then is, you chant. and you take shelter again deliberately. And you may not be able to sit still and like block out sound and stop doing anything else and just chant for a long stretch of time, but you can take shelter of the Maha Mantra, even just in your mind. You know, if you can't even speak it, like that can happen. Just chant it in your mind and go to that place of prayer. So it's always, he's always available for us like that. Yeah, still advisable to have a morning practice, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be completely inoculated against confusion. Maybe a way in which you're like, okay, whoa, Hare Krishna, what do I do here? You know?
Driving last night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's raining. More comments, reflections, anything that stood out?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me? I was like being reflective about the message this morning, and I guess I have a question, is how do we start having people kind of turn towards Godhead when they're so turned away? What are some good techniques to help, say, chant, but in a way that is receptive to someone that is just so covered in Pali?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, as we've talked about in the Nectar of Instruction classes and other places, we're advised to recognize the difference between the innocent and those who are averse. Those who are actively averse, we're advised to give them space, which means that we pray for them, but our direct interaction with them is like on the level of giving prasadam and indirectly supporting them. Those who are really covered, because there's even something in the Bible about like don't cast pearls before swine, right? Don't give away your gifts to somebody who's going to trample them, and don't put them in a position to make offenses unnecessarily. So we have the prerogative actually, and the permission to assess like how receptive somebody is, right, to the medicine. And so there's a variety of different ways. So it's always available to pray. It's always available to give prasadam. And then if they're more receptive, you can start talking about bhakti in very general terms. Like you can talk about the Maha Mantra as a mantra for peace. You can talk about it as a way of purifying the mind. I mean, is it that? Yeah. That's actually like not centrally what it is, but it's not a lie. You can say that. Prabhupada has said that. I have said that. It's true. Somebody may be like, oh, I don't believe in God. I'm not interested in God. It's like, yeah, don't worry about God. I have this mantra, and it's like it helps you, have peace. And so you just kind of like, sorry, Krishna, we're just gonna like take you out of the center for a second, apparently, just to get you people to chant your names. And that's okay. You can do that. As long as you're not, when they come to you and they're like, well, is this actually like spiritual? You'd be like, well, yeah, ultimately it is spiritual. You can't lie, but you can be like, this is a mantra that'll create peace for you. You can do that and see if they're willing to just try chanting. If somebody's more open, you can start to, so you want to see like, what are their hangups? Is it like cultural? Is it the Sanskrit is scary for them? Is it the idea of God? Is it like the regulative principles? Like, are they living a super chaotic life? Or if you talk about like, yeah, meat eating is not going to help you, that's going to freak them out. Or are they actually, for example, some people are already kind of in the mode of goodness. And you're like, well, actually, you're not eating meat. And that's what I'm doing too. I'm also like not eating meat. And you're already doing these things and I'm doing these things. And maybe you want to try something else that the same tradition is shared, because 9 out of 10 things that you're already doing are the same. So you could try chanting this mantra or whatever. It's a very case by case basis. And the thing you can always do is be a devotee. Just be a devotee, be visibly a devotee, be unashamed about it. Don't be dramatic about it, but it's like, this is what I do. I practice devotion. And people will see that and they'll see the effect it has on you in your consciousness and in your life. And you can't argue with that. You can't argue with results. You can argue with theology. You can argue with philosophy. You can't argue with results in people's lives. You also can't argue with prasad. Just saying.
Give him a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that last piece there is like when he asked that question, that came to mind of like, be so steadfast in your relationship and connection with Krishna that those that don't know God, like just being in your presence, can get a taste of knowing God.
Right.
That maybe with those people that are averse, or maybe that you're just even uncomfortable talking about it with them, whatever it may be, of like just being in that, like being a devotee,
Yeah.
and being, sharing that through your energy. People can know God that way.
As one great devotee put it, he said, we can't with our heads and our senses prove the existence of God, but we can prove the existence of those who actually are experiencing God. We can see that. We can experience devotees. Just like Narada Muni, he's in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. Thus, listening attentively, my taste for hearing increased. He was with devotees who had taste. He could experience by their experience. But he was a little open, so he was innocent. So, maybe we don't invite just anybody to the Sangha to hear and chant Srimad Bhagavatam. Maybe we do, if they're actually ready. They're actually like a little bit receptive. It works. But there's a variety of things we can do in between, like throwing them into a full 24-hour hearing and chanting session, and like not wanting to be in the same zip code as them, but praying from a distance. So
I think also like sharing your story, like sharing and hearing other devotees' stories is so helpful, because when you hear, like last night, I always ask devotees, how did you remember Krishna? How did you come to Krishna consciousness? And when you hear how other people or devotees or even non-devotees, have brought Krishna to people, I think that's inspirational. So like talking to devotees and understanding how they came, and understanding different ways that you can approach other people through the sharing of stories, I think is really important.
yeah, I mean, Narada Muni is doing that, and bhakti is all pervasive. It's actually sneaky. Bhakti, because this world exists for two purposes: to facilitate sense gratification and to facilitate people turning back to Krishna. And those two purposes are always available, which means no matter how degraded an age is and how apparently covered Krishna is, there's always a way in which Krishna's internal energy can support any sincere living entity to come to Krishna. And there's like amazing ways. So you should definitely, that's a great question. In fact, I think there's a website like How I Came to Krishna or something. I found, and there's just like, maybe I'll look it up and we'll send the link in the WhatsApp. But there's just a bunch of videos of devotees, some videos and some maybe like audio of them talking about how they came. And it's always really cool and always very unique individual. So definitely echo that. Anything else? Questions, reflections, comments?
And one other thing, I loved how you shared how your advisor said that public health is turning off the faucet rather than mopping the floor. And I was thinking about how like yoga asana, we say it's preventative health. So it's like do asana on a daily basis so that you're more flexibility.
This is from a mode of goodness culture. It believes in preventing problems instead of curing them.
Right.
Necessarily.
And it's much easier to prevent than to then have to cure and to go to the root like that.
Yeah.
And then as you were just talking, it's like the way that our whole Sangha formed, right? It's like was little tiny bit like come to yoga and hear a little bit of kirtan, but I wasn't talking about Krishna, right? It took a while to even like bring Krishna, really took longer to bring Krishna in, and like to how we are all here together. Even how I came into Krishna, it was like little Krishna consciousness, little bites. So like it's bite size so that we can hear. And then here we all are having a Bhagavatam class, a morning program. Like that was a slow evolution over 4 years, right? So to remember that, each of us remember that as we're sharing with our people and our families. And
I mean, some of the patterns I've seen in the presentation of Krishna consciousness is that from successful devotees, successful in their practice, but successful in presenting it, is that people are looking for good relationships. They are looking for peace of mind. They're looking for good health. They are looking for enlightened leadership. And they're looking for their work to represent them and to be an extension of them and to do good in the world. If you can show them that bhakti culture includes any of those things, they will be interested in what you have to say. and they will start to take that, and some percentage of those people will be interested in why that's working for them. And they'll start to inquire deeper, and at which point you start to present Krishna, because bhakti culture does include all those things definitively. And so if you are able to present, if you can help people meet their material desires through spiritual methods, then you bring Krishna in and show them that's the active ingredient. Some percentage of them will keep coming back to you for more Krishna. And that's what expert presenters of bhakti do. What in their indirect presentation, they create a bridge to Krishna by helping people to meet any of those goals, which they're not getting met in this world. Those are fundamental human needs that are not getting met. And people are living with like broken relationships, broken jobs, broken health, broken leadership, you name it. And if you can help them with that, they'll appreciate you, and they'll also appreciate what you're giving, which may not be completely direct at first, but you want to, yeah, the blueprint is there, you know. So.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Now let's take this opportunity to offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like desire trees, can fulfill the desires of everyone, and are full of compassion for all the conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatrukyascha pasutubhyescha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Have a great day, everyone.